This is the Rational National talking about John Kirby. The good thing about this video is we're going to be able to see not only Rational National, but Humanist Report and representatives from other, I think the guy in the bottom right is the Serfs. These are the people that the Democratic Party is now pushing away.
Both of them are featuring the White House spokesman, John Kirby. The first video you'll see is his response to what's happening in Gaza. The second video you'll see was his response to what's happening in Ukraine. Play the first one.
They're comparing videos between Gaza and Ukraine.
It is combat. It is bloody. It is ugly, and it's going to be messy. And innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. I wish I could tell you something different. I wish that wasn't going to happen, but it is going to happen. And that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it dismissible. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to still express concerns about that and do everything we can to help the Israelis do everything they can to minimize it. But that's unfortunately the nature of conflict.
Now watch his same response. What his responses to someone asking about what was happening in Ukraine back when that first started.
It's hard to look at what he's doing in Ukraine, what his forces are doing in Ukraine, and think that any ethical, moral individual could justify that. It's difficult to look at the It's difficult to look at some of the images.
It's John Kirby. Don't bat an eye when they told him about the deaths of Palestinian babies. He's trying to convince us that this is tearing him up. We don't have to watch that again. This is some Rotten Tomato Awards acting level right here. Like, don't do this again, John. You don't do this often. Don't do this again. You're not good at it. When you're losing an argument, just start crying. Just start crying. When people stop buying your shit, just start crying. I guess that's the strategy that John Kirby is employing here. So let's see
what his forces are doing in Ukraine, and think that any ethical, moral individual could justify that. It's difficult to look at the It's difficult to look at some of the images and imagine that any well-thinking, serious, mature leader would do that.
What does your kids say when you come home? Hey, Dad, you're kind of putting it on there kind of thick there, Dad. Like, what is the people in your real life who know that you're acting? Like, what do you say to your wife? How did I do today? Darling, how did I do? Oh, God. Terrible acting. But that's for Ukraine. When Ukraine was in the position, right? According to people that compare it.
So I can't talk to his psychology, but I think we can all speak to his depravity.
Wow. The emotion for seeing people in Ukraine, white people.
Matt, can you send that to me, please?
I mean, it is unnerving how blasé.
Can you send me that shit? Can you send me that, Matt? It is shocking to them. Man, we are living in a clown show. Our government is a clown show. And I tell my wife all the time, when I watch some of what our government does, like that clip of him acting, I get an eerie deja vu feeling that I'm watching the Hunger Games. You know, in the Hunger Games, you know, is it TV show? The game show, a war show, the guy that's real flamboyant, real loud, and real excitable on his show is a talk show. That's the sort of over-the-top sort of acting this was. And I just had that deja vu feeling of this is like the Hunger Games. We are living in a collapsing empire where psychopaths are crying to get you to support more weapons of war to kill people. But all right.
Wow. The emotion for seeing people in Ukraine, white people.
Matt, can you send that to me, please?
I mean, it is unnerving how blasé he was when asked about the Palestinian people's lives, and then how emotional he got.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make it clear, I think the people in Ukraine and the people in Gaza and the West Bank are being victimized by an oppressor.
So he wants both. You should have the emotion for both, and I'll come back to that spot 222. What I want to make sure you saw the first. We remember the first part, because remember how he acted about Ukrainian deaths. Now let's see how he acts about. Let's remember or recall how he acted about Palestinian deaths.
War. It is combat. It is bloody. It is ugly, and it's going to be messy. And innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. I wish I could tell you something different. I wish that wasn't going to happen. But it is going to happen, and that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it dismissible. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to still express concerns about that and do everything we can to help the Israelis do everything they can to minimize it. But that's unfortunately the nature of conflict.
Now watch his same response. When his response to someone asking about.
It is a good point, and now let's go back to where we were.
This is not an attack on Ukrainian people. This is an attack on the U.S. government's position on one thing that flies in the face of their position on another.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What Putin is doing in Ukraine, I saw the images. So disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen images of kids without faces come across my feed in Gaza.
That press conference after the hospital, I was like, I had to turn off the internet after that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm never going to be able to unsee that.
So
That
bad.
uncensored footage of
Yeah.
them just literally
So
in a
bad.
pile of bodies of kids. I was like, even in horror movies, I don't see this shit, and this is real fucking life.
There's a video that stood out to me of this little girl. She was like 9, and I forgot what the caption was, but she was hugging her little siblings and grappling with the reality that she was their de facto mom now because both of their parents were killed. Just like 9, so she's trying to hold her little siblings.
Yeah,
and it's just
the video I saw was a little girl too. She was running back in, and she said, "That's my mom. I can tell by her hair." And she was sitting down trying to, really wrap her mind about what her life was going to look like from that moment on. Like, that's my mom. I know her by her hair. Like, I know that's my mom. That was like.
I wanted to play it up until that point again. I wanted the audience to hear what is bringing about the NATO left to step outside of the good graces of their bosses, the Democratic Party. And it sounds like the graphics that are coming out of Gaza. That's what they're talking about. That's what got Matt Bender in an uproar. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. The Bernie Sanders industrial complex have decided to go further left than Bernie.